Instability in France as pension age raised from 62 to 64. In the latest news in France, there are riots in the street and burning buildings because the age to take a pension has been raised from 62 to 64. This is causing people to riot. The move has been criticized by trade unions, political parties, and members of the public who argue that it unfairly targets workers and will leave many struggling to make ends meet. Background: the pension system in France has been a point of contention for many years, with concerns raised about its long-term sustainability. The system operates on a pay-as-you-go basis, which means that current workers pay for the pensions of retirees. As the population ages and the number of retirees increases, this system becomes increasingly expensive to maintain. In response, the government has proposed a number of reforms aimed at reducing the costs of the pension system and ensuring its long-term viability. One of the key proposals is to raise the minimum age for receiving a pension from 62 to 64. The government argues that this is necessary in order to reduce the financial burden on the pension system and to encourage people to work for longer. The proposal has been controversial from the outset, with trade unions and opposition parties fiercely opposing the move. The uproar and riots. The announcement of the pension reform proposal was met with widespread protests and demonstrations across France. Many workers felt that the move was unfair and that they were being targeted unfairly. There were fears that the reform would disproportionately affect those in physically demanding jobs who would find it difficult to work until the age of 64. The protests quickly turned violent, with demonstrators setting fire to cars and buildings and clashing with police. In some cases, the riots were fueled by a broader sense of anger and frustration towards the government, with many people feeling that their voices were not being heard. The impact on French society. The decision to raise the minimum pension age is likely to have a significant impact on French society. For many workers, retirement is seen as a time to enjoy the fruits of their labor and to spend time with their families. The prospect of having to work for an additional 2 years is likely to be deeply unpopular, particularly among those who are already struggling to make ends meet. At the same time, the reform is likely to have a positive impact on the long-term viability of the pension system. By encouraging people to work for longer, the government hopes to reduce the financial burden on the system and ensure that it remains sustainable in the long run. Conclusion: the decision to raise the minimum age for receiving a pension in France has sparked widespread protests and riots, with many workers feeling that they are being unfairly targeted. While the move is likely to be unpopular, it is also necessary if the French pension system is to remain viable in the long run. As the debate continues, it is important that all sides work together to find a solution that is fair and sustainable for all. Do you think the situation in France is severe? Should the pension age have been raised?